so many times people use 20, 30, 40% of a system that they use, and they don't use all the capabilities of it. Like, for example, in Bill.com, you have recurring bills that you can set up for things like rent, right? Where you don't have to wait for the invoice, you know it's coming in, and you can automate that. You have your auto bill payment. So if it's approved, you can automatically pay the bill based on the due date or based on your terms, and you don't have to have someone actually approve it.
Welcome to the AI in Accounting podcast. Now, here's your host, Joshua Feinberg of Vic.ai.
So I am here with Berson and Bella Hobbel from Fringe Advisory. And we're going to be talking all about today Bill.com best practices. But what I'd like to start out by doing, and thanks so much for joining me today.
Our pleasure.
Thank you.
So what I'd like to start out by doing is to learn a little bit more about Fringe Advisory, your roles within the firm, and the kind of clients you work with, and how you got there on that journey before we shift gears a little bit and talk about Bill.com.
Gotcha. So Fringe Advisory is an outsourced accounting, controller, CFO firm. We also do what we call business reimagination, which is looking at a business and thinking, if we didn't have any technology constraints from when a business was started, how can we redo that with today's technology and take advantage of it? So that's kind of what we do. We help all size businesses from pre-revenue startups through 50, 60, 70 million in revenue and up. And really what we're trying to do is be a real partner for our clients and advise them in the best way possible so that they can really thrive and achieve their goals while we take on all the burden on the finance and optimizing and making everything more efficient. You want to?
How we got started?
Yeah.
So we both come from the big accounting world. So I worked at Resnick and then EisnerAmper, where I met Aaron. Aaron worked at Deloitte and then at EisnerAmper. We both were running the outsourced accounting group at EisnerAmper. And about a little more than a year ago, we decided that it's time for us to move on and do our own thing, because while working at big firms taught us a lot, and it was a great experience, and we met a lot of great people and clients. Big firms come with big challenges and limitations. Sometimes some of the smaller or mid-sized customers are getting bypassed because of the price or any other issues, and we really want to focus on helping those companies succeed and grow and bring our expertise to the table. So we decided that we should do our own thing, and here we are.
Yep.
Awesome. So the focus of today's episode is on Bill.com best practices, but the first place to start is to tell our viewers, tell our listeners how Bill.com fits in big picture with Fringe Advisory.
Yeah, sure. So Bill.com we use for our accounts payable automation and money movement, I would say, of that function, right? So we use that in a context on basically all of our clients when we are digitizing and making more efficient their AP process, right? And really making it where they don't have to be tied to the office anymore. They don't have to be signing checks manually. We're able to give them a lot more internal controls and a lot more visibility into what's going on near real time, as well as being able to work remotely with them because everything's cloud-based. So that's kind of where it fits in. We use it as part of our standard offering at this point for pretty much clients of all sizes.
So it sounds like it's a big part of productivity, efficiency, helping your clients modernize, and especially relevant in times like we're in right now.
Exactly.
And internal controls. That's important. That's one way that we can bring internal controls and the big firm internal controls into businesses of all sizes. Yeah,
and with what's going on now, like you just said, Josh, I think we had pretty much no disruption in servicing our clients or in their processes or anything, with everything being the way it is and all the changes, even with them being remote and us always being remote. We didn't have anything fall through the cracks because everything just basically continued as normal, even though we had all this disruption that we've had over the last few months.
Yeah, I think in a lot of ways, companies that were thinking about business continuity, like for more routine things like if you're on the east coast of the U.S., that there's hurricane season. If you're in California, contending with earthquakes, and the Midwest tornadoes and flash fires and floods. But yeah, it's definitely forcing a lot of companies to reinvent the playbook on the fly that hadn't planned ahead. But it sounds like you're quite a bit ahead of the curve, and a lot of your clients should be as well.
Yeah, fortunately.
It's good. Somebody's got to think proactively about these issues, because a lot of times they get stuck in the day-to-day grind and don't necessarily think that far ahead. So the first place I wanted to start with Bill.com is, what do you feel is like your favorite tip that you would give to beginners that are just starting out with using the Bill.com platform?
So my first tip would be, if you're a beginner, is go to your settings and configure settings. I think it's very important. Your email settings and notification settings. Why it's important? Because it's very easy to get your mailbox blown up by all the emails and notifications you get. And then you're like, oh my God, what do I do? Why are they emailing me? It just becomes very frustrating and scary. And a lot of users just forget about it. And they're like, this junk, I don't want to hear it. And they miss stuff, right? So that's one of the important things. And a very important thing that I want to stress is that if you choose to use Bill.com, stick to just Bill.com. Forget about paying all the other payment methods. I'm not talking about credit cards, but don't do Bill.com and then occasional wires or occasional check, because that creates issues for us accountants. And it's us chasing you, figuring out what is that. It creates double work, it creates overpayments or underpayments. So if you do choose it, stick to it and just make it your number one AP process. Use that only.
Yeah, and I'd add to that, for a tip for beginners, in my mind, I mean, maybe it's not so much of a beginner thing, but the sync, right, with your general ledger or with something like Vic.ai, if you're using that too in conjunction with Bill.com. But making sure that you're clearing those errors that come up inevitably in a timely fashion, because otherwise things don't flow through to all your different systems. You might end up going through a closed process and not realizing something wasn't recorded because of it, or again, to the reconciliation issues, you then might have reconciliation issues if you're not keeping everything, in sync with one another, because there's these errors where things couldn't push back and forth. And also in context of that, understand the sync and what's going on there, so that it makes it easier to clear those errors as they come up. Unfortunately, it's just a side effect of working in the cloud. You have these connection issues that come up all the time. Yeah.
So it sounds like the first thing is getting tabs on what the communication cadence is going to be, how many email notifications are going to come in. The second part of it is just, once you've standardized on Bill.com, use Bill.com largely across the board. Make sure that you're clear on how your cloud accounting systems are going to sync with each other, and be mindful of the kinds of errors that can come up. What is normal typically for, Bella, coming back to your advice on the email inbox, what's a normal number of messages that a typical end user client would see?
My recommendation is go into the settings and see what's important to you, right? Depending on what kind of user you are, right? If you're an approver, you do want to get emails saying that, hey, there's a bill ready for you to approve, because otherwise you'll miss it, right? And whether you want to get it after every bill was entered into the system, or whether you want to get a digest of once a day or once a week, that's on you. That's up to you, depending on how many bills you process and all that stuff. If you are someone who needs to pay, again, the same thing. Just get what's important for you. Do you want to get notified every hour, at the end of the day, once a day, once a month, whatever it is? That's the most important thing. Just figure out your priorities of what communications means to you and what you want to get, what kind of emails you want to get, right? If someone changed something on the bill and you don't care, then just turn it off. Otherwise, your inbox will just blow up.
Yeah, and to add to that, I think it also depends on how many invoices you're processing, right? If you're processing 300-400 invoices a month, if you have it turned on where you're going to get a notification after each one is ready for approval, I mean, you're going to die of inbox overload there. And that's where the summary emails really come in handy. And that's one of the nice things about Bill.com. You can set those summary emails to basically come in whenever you want them. A specific day of the week, and it'll be the first thing in your inbox, specific dates of the month. So on the 15th, on the 10th, on the 20th. You can specify the days of the month or the days of the week for it to come in. So I'd say do that and then make that match your process for when you're going to be paying. So that's your reminder to pay and has everything you need to do, and you don't have that overload of all the different invoices every single time they're ready for you. But then again, if you're only processing 5 invoices, maybe you don't want to follow a cadence and you want to process them as they're ready. So it's really, as Bella said, it depends on your company and how you're using it. But definitely it's something that you want to get under control, otherwise you'll be overloaded real fast.
Also, if you are a principal of a company and you have people who have access to the bank account and they do the payments, I highly recommend that you do turn on notifications when someone makes payment. That way you're kind of in control. And if you see something that's off, you can catch it early on before the payment is released. I think that's very important.
So that comes back full circle to the idea of using Bill.com as part of your internal control systems. So those are some great tips for beginners. And I know the two of you go to a lot of accounting conferences, and I imagine from time to time you share tips and best practices and war stories with power users. So what advice, what would be your favorite tip that you'd provide to a power user of Bill.com on some things you've discovered over the years?
So my favorite advice is, as a power user, you know what you want, you know what to do, and you know where the limitations are in the system. So always give feedback, always be in touch with the company and give feedback for improvement, for something that is there that shouldn't be there, or that they don't have but it should be. It's like common sense, because they do listen, and it's beneficial for you, it's beneficial for them, and it's beneficial for everybody else in the industry. To me, that's the most important thing, is really having that line of communication and them and the software provider being open to listening to that feedback.
Yeah. And then for me, my favorite power tip is to actually use the more advanced functions of the system, right? So many times people use 20, 30, 40% of a system that they use, and they don't use all the capabilities of it. Like, for example, in Bill.com, you have recurring bills that you can set up for things like rent, right? Where you don't have to wait for the invoice, you know it's coming in and you can automate that. You have your auto bill payment. So if it's approved, you can automatically pay the bill based on the due date or based on your terms, and you don't have to have someone actually approve it. And then, I mean, one other thing that Bill.com does that people don't really use at all is their accounts receivable function. So if you're really good with the AP function, expand into the AR function, because you can use it as well, and it works great. And I mean, we use it for our firm for AR, and a few clients use it as well. And it's nice to have it all in one place. So I would say to take a look at that also.
Well, so it sounds like first is just a general line of communication to be providing your clients with insight on how they can better use the platform. And then the second part is just being aware of the more advanced features like auto bill pay, recurring payments, and if they've never thought about it, using it for accounts receivable, not just accounts payable.
Exactly.
Cool. So regardless of whether somebody is new to Bill.com or an advanced power user, what do you see as the single biggest mistake that people are making across the board, that maybe it's something that gets improved in the product down the road, but in the meantime, you're just like, hey, wait a second, I just want to make sure that you're aware that this can come up?
So again, going back to the users, it's ignoring emails to enter the bills, ignoring emails to approve the bills. And the biggest thing that I hear from clients, especially who are new to Bill.com, is ignoring emails to pay. We've had a lot of clients through the years that we've heard that they say, yeah, we started using Bill.com, but the process is still clunky because we kind of forget to pay the bills, or we don't know exactly who is the right approver. We don't have all that set up. And this goes back to Aaron's point, is, just set up the system properly, understand how it interacts, and understand who gets what notifications, who is the approver, who is the payer. Excuse me. So that's, to me, is the biggest mistake that I see people make. Yeah,
I'd say the biggest mistake I see is, because I do a lot of work with other firms and talk to a lot of these other firm owners, both small through top 10 firms. And I'd say the biggest mistake that I see people doing with Bill.com, and I mean, it's not unique to Bill.com, but it's really with any of these cloud systems, but specifically Bill.com, is they don't put enough planning and thought into how they're going to use the system up front, right? So to like what Bella was saying, actually planning out your approval flows before you start using the system, seeing who's going to be in there, who's going to do what, who's going to pay, what's your payment schedule and your cadence there, how are you getting these invoices into Bill.com or into Vic if you're using Vic along with it, right? You need to get it into digital form. Are you going to be able to get all your vendors to send it to you via digital? Do you have to have some other service or person on the ground to scan things in, right? Do you have a scanner on premise for your client, right? We've run into that where they just don't have a scanner, or they had one sitting in the corner, collecting dust and they don't even know how to use it, right? So, actually planning the whole from vendor sending through payment, and how it's all going to work together, both with your staff at your company, right? If you're the outsourced accountant, through the staff at your client's company, because that's really where I see people thinking they can just, it's easy to set up. I'll set it up. It'll work. It does its thing. And you don't realize that unless you do all these things, configure it right, and plan it through, it's not a magic bullet. It's not going to solve everything on its own. You need to give some thought to it. Otherwise, that's where you get people forgetting to pay bills. You get people who aren't using it properly. Things aren't coming in timely, and then they end up defaulting to I need to pay a bill by this afternoon, and then they send a wire. And now you get into Bella's earlier point of how you're doing wires outside the system and sending checks and doing all these other things because you're not giving the proper lead time to pay bills and you're not actually using it properly. So to me, that's the biggest mistake I see.
And then that leads to issues, because if you have one department that makes the wire payments and the other department handles Bill.com, but then the department that made the wire did not tell Bill.com that the bill is paid, and now time comes back and someone pays the bill twice or something to that effect, which we've had happen as well with some of our clients. That's why it's important to just stick to one system.
So what I seem to keep hearing across the board is that there's a lot of best practices and institutional knowledge that the two of you have picked up over the years that just isn't widely known. So how does that factor into like how you onboard new clients and your whole methodology for ongoing engagement? I would guess in larger accounting and finance teams, they eventually figure a lot of this out, but in smaller companies, they probably need a lot more hand-holding.
I'd say, smaller companies, we do. I mean, well, really with all of our clients, we do a lot of hand-holding up front. I mean, to the point of we're investing in the relationship with each one of our clients. We're not going to do work with them for a month or two, in ideal situations. So I would actually say in the first 2 to 3 months, we're almost losing money on the engagement because we're investing into learning and training and educating, both on their side as well as us learning their business, so that we make sure everything's fine-tuned for the way they work, the way they want to accomplish things, and then training all of their team members for how to use all these systems we put in place, how to use Bill.com, what that process is, giving them documentation, timelines, calendars, all that fun stuff. But yeah, there's a lot of hand-holding, especially during onboarding, a lot of education, because typically the people we're working with have never used a system like this. Or if they have, it could be they used it a year ago, and in cloud technology, how fast things iterate and how fast things change. So they're not used to the newer version of it or the way that things work now. So I'd say it factors into that very heavily.
That's excellent. So the final question that I want to talk with you about today is, we looked at tips for beginners, tips for power users, the biggest mistakes that people make. Also curious, like from the standpoint of Fringe Advisory, a company that's financial advisory services, outsourced CFO services, outsourced accounting, client accounting services. When you think about the big picture business opportunity of where this entire space is headed over the next 3 to 6 months, next 3 to 5 years, what do you think it looks like? What, from like a high level CEO perspective, if these firms had somebody that was really like a product manager that was constantly thinking about how to iterate and improve on what their clients need most, where are we going?
That's a tough question, but I really do think that, for people who are currently using Bill.com, right, firms that are currently using Bill.com, the opportunity is really in making it a standard and making it almost a non-issue, if you will. So the fact that we still talk about the softwares as Bill.com, as Vic, as whatever other softwares we're using. But I think the real benefit is to shift away from selling software to our clients and focusing on selling the services, knowing that we have great partners like you guys behind us, and that you're improving on the technology side. You're going to keep that current and updated, but then just focusing on the human aspect, which is what we do a lot at Fringe, is, what are the actual pain points of your client, of your team internally? How can you do more for them with the same amount of time or less time, right? So as you automate things in Bill.com, as you leverage other integrations into the systems, I mean, we even build our own integration into a lot of these systems to automate more things that we can do. So I think really the opportunity is in that efficiency standpoint, and then offering more services, because once you're capturing or involved in all of these business processes, you can do things like cash flow management super effectively. You can do forecasting and budgeting and being prospective with your clients, and actually helping them solve their strategic problems and not just being transactional with them. I think that's where the industry as a whole is very transactional right now, especially in the outsourced space. We focus on transactions. People price based on transactions. Everything's about the transaction. We shifted from hourly billing to transaction billing. But that's all we've done. Everyone likes to say they're value billing right now, but no, we're transaction billing. We're compliance billing, even though we want to say we're not compliance, but that's what people are basing a lot of their charges on, right? So I think that the opportunity is really in moving beyond that into true advisory, true partnership with your clients. I mean, we call ourselves integrated advisors because we want to be integrated into every aspect of the business, not just a financial advisor and advisor. We want to be a team member with them, right? So I think really that's the opportunity to move beyond transaction and compliance, where we're actually stuck now, even though a lot of people don't want to admit it.
Change is hard.
Yes, it's hard, and it takes a long time, a lot longer than people expect.
Well, this has been excellent. I really appreciate the two of you taking the time to speak with me today, all about your favorite Bill.com tips and the journey the Fringe Advisor is taking on. I've been speaking Aaron Berson and Bella Hobbel from Fringe Advisory. If someone who's watching, someone who's listening, reading this wants to learn more about the two of you or learn more about your firm, where's the best place for them to look?
So the best place would be our website, fringeadvisory.co, or LinkedIn. We're there. Aaron Berson, Bella Hobbel, or fringeadvisory.co. Yep. And our contact information is there, and we work 24/7. So please feel free. Any questions, we're happy to answer.
It's the byproduct of the digital transformation. It never stops.
Exactly.
It's the importance of the technology to make sure so it doesn't have to stop, and we actually can still have lives and not have to be 24/7 all the time.
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly. The computer's 24/7. We get to sleep every once in a while.
That's important. Thanks so much. Stay safe and definitely keep in touch.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us.
Really appreciate it.
Likewise. Bye.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the AI in Accounting podcast. To subscribe and leave a review, check us out at blog.vic.ai or wherever you like to consume podcast episodes, including Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, and YouTube.